represented and are properly advocated for when it comes to parliamentary democracy. I think that's hugely important, and I think Belfast City Council in those circumstances did the only thing that they could do based on the advice that they were given. But more than that, I believe they did the right thing.
Just briefly, a question for Gavin and then one for a very different topic. Gavin, your party leader, Peter Robinson, who obviously did hold this seat previously, when the Unionist Pact was announced, his response was pretty emphatic. He said, the only message to Naomi is dry your tears away, you're going out. Aside from issues of taste about that sort of statement, surely that is the wrong message to be sending at a time when people increasingly are not coming out to vote, and you need to encourage unionists in Belfast to come out to vote. Surely unionists looking at that might say, why should we bother? It's already been decided.
It certainly hasn't been decided. The only decision that will be taken is on the 7th of May, and that's why I'm campaigning. And I'm out campaigning, and I'm knocking doors and I'm talking to people, and I'm building relationships across this constituency. So rather than put votes from others to me, listen to what I have to say would be my response. I've given an interview, this is a Slugger O'Toole. I've given an interview to Slugger O'Toole where I acknowledge it was Naomi and I might differ fundamentally on a lot of the political issues. That she's a capable politician. I have no difficulty in acknowledging that. And I have no need to say anything other than put forward my views positively, challenge where necessary, but make sure that we're prepared to stand up for East Belfast and its people.
And just very briefly, is that you trying to distance yourself from what your party leader said?
Because you certainly didn't endorse him. You left quite a gap there. Don't listen to what other people say, listen to what I say. You...
Correct. Listen to what I say. Listen to what I say. Follow the campaign. Recognise the relationships that I'm building right across East Belfast and the warmth and the reception that we're receiving in East Belfast. Listen to what I say, follow the campaign, and you'll not hear comments like that from me.
You have a question for Naomi?
Some people in East Belfast clearly felt very strongly about the Alliance Party's decision in terms of the flag, but a totally separate issue, which probably another set of people, and there's probably some crossover felt very strongly about, was your stance on gay marriage, equal marriage. That's not something, as far as I understand it, was in your manifesto the last time that you ran. Is that something that you now regret, given that some of your party members, such as Trevor Lunn, have come out to criticise what the party did in endorsing that?
No, it isn't something I regret, because I made a decision that I believe was the right one. I actually believe that if the state is going to provide a service, which marriage is a service that the state provides, it should provide it equally to all of its citizens. And I believe that it is then a matter that churches should be protected in terms of doctrine and conscience to be able to make their own decisions about how they progress those issues. I want to see an open and a liberal and a tolerant democracy. And I believe in freedom of religion, and I think those two can be balanced. I believe in voting as I did in Westminster, we achieved that balance. I also believe that our party policy does, but I accept that there will be people in this society who are uncomfortable with that, and I respect their right to disagree. So Trevor Lunn is also a Westminster candidate in this election. It has not disadvantaged him that he took a different view to me. This is not about trying to persecute those who have a different opinion. It is not about trying to close down the debate or the discussion, but it is about taking a stand for something that as a party we believe is important, and that is one of equality. It is about treating people fairly and equally under the law, and ensuring that whilst I enjoy freedom of religion as a Christian, others with different religious beliefs enjoy that same freedom, and those with no religious beliefs enjoy freedom from religion. And for me, that's an important principle on which we can build the kind of tolerant, open society that I think we need to have if Northern Ireland is going to flourish, be an attractive destination for inward investment, but also is going to be able to do proper business within a UK framework where these things are taken as read. The idea that we are having, for example, debates around the gay blood ban in Northern Ireland is something that could severely hamper our ability as Northern Ireland politicians, and particularly in the DUP, to be able to have influence at Westminster. Because we've already heard when pushed Andy Byrne, the health spokesperson, express concern about having to form some kind of allegiance with a party that opposes gay people ever being able to give blood. So we need to confront the reality that in doing so we diminish our influence and relevance at Westminster, and we make ourselves a place apart. And that is not good for Northern Ireland, and it is certainly not good for the people who live here in fear of things like homophobia and racism and other abuse.
In terms of what you said at the beginning, haven't damaged Trevor on his particular kind of conscience and the approach that he took. Do you regret that it's not a firm party? It is not a party policy, but you're then allowing people to kind of override it. Would you prefer that it was a uniform policy that everybody adhered to?
Well, it is a uniform policy, but in every party we will make decisions about where we put emphasis in terms of discipline. And what we were trying to do is convince the public that this is not something to be feared. I actually believe in this policy. And I want people to be confident that if they take a different view, they will not in any way be diminished or deprived of the opportunity to speak their mind. Now, if we go around and have a witch hunt internally in our own party against those who, for conscience reasons, take a different view, that sends out a very negative message to those in society outside. So we had two jobs to do. One was to deliver as many votes as we could in favour of equality, and the other one was to reassure those outside who were concerned about the impact that might have on their ability to freely express their views.
Okay.
And I think we got that balance, not perfectly, no party does, but I think we got it about as right as we could.
Just like kind of Gavin comment too, because I mean, in your party, although some of the MLAs, maybe even some of the MPs have slightly different views, the whip is much tighter, more tightly used, and actually people don't get to kind of say what their conscience is.
That's not true at all, Alan. I mean, we don't whip on these issues. There's no need to whip on these issues, particularly in marriage. The view is very clear right across our assembly group, and that's from individuals who have relatives, sons and daughters, who are homosexual, but that is it. There is no whip on those issues. I thought it was wonderful that Trevor Lunn, because of our position and the closeness with his ours, decided to include me in his election literature. He had a good photograph of me on the front page, and I'm glad
In the background.
In the background.
Where would you like you to be?
I hear it was said that photograph was taken in the Park Avenue at an Alliance event. Actually, if you look at it, it's in the Long Gallery from about a year ago. It shows just how much effort has been put into that campaign and the literature altogether.
Okay, I think we're going to...
Sorry, I do want to make this point, because the difficulty I have, and I think it is right in an issue like this, that we are respectful of different views, is that when you get that subsequent mantra about raising equality and putting pressure on people who have an alternative view. I have an alternative view to Naomi, I'm right to hold it. I have every right to hold it. The problem for the Alliance Party is that two MLAs that they have in East Belfast held the same view that I do, held a conscious view. And both of them were put under severe pressure to change their stance. One of them did, and one of them didn't. But they should never have felt that pressure.
I would have heard...
Both of them are sitting in the audience tonight, nodding no. Both of them are sitting in the audience tonight, and both of them are nodding no. And just to put it in context, Judith is now chair of the East Belfast Alliance Association, and it has not damaged her political career, it has not damaged Chris's political career, it hasn't damaged anyone's political career. And I think when people do that, it's about spreading fear and mistrust and making people fearful of what equality looks like. Well, I can tell you in Alliance, it's not an exclusive principle, it's one that actually brings people together.
Okay, we're going to take a kind of a dive.
Sounds good, but it doesn't turn out in reality.
Okay, we're going to take a kind of a dive Coke break for a second to swap a couple of mics, apparently. So,
we've only got water. There's a bit of this.
We can get egg on our face. Well, I think the research shows a lot of people think conferences with this, since an MP, people just fall into the, they start to the union, the go, you know what I mean, the go to the established one, you know what I mean? Well, no, well, if you are adoption since the 50, it's very tight. To get in. It's 55-40, it's already third. Yeah, that's hard to shake the other way. It needs a point where you use the perfect storm, which it can happen. Like, who's happy?
Isn't it good in the cinema that you get an interval? And apparently the popcorn's on its way, courtesy of Strawberry Beyond.
Okay, yes, me. Okay. You have the three priests announced. It'll be very different for each couple. Okay, we're going to kind of start back again, and hopefully we'll get back again here in 6 minutes. Alex Kane, you have a couple of questions? And we're working, yeah, just one actually, so both of them, same question, and just very specifically about East Belfast. Why was the pact imperative?
Since you're kind of involved in the pact, I guess you're a good person to start. That's an interesting one because I wasn't involved in it at all.
When did you first hear it?
When it was agreed. I didn't ask for it. I think it was St. Patrick's Day, was it, that the statement went out, the media folk will know. I knew that there were discussions. I knew that it was a consideration, but that East Belfast was not the focus. And another constituency, so no, Alec, the question was keep it specific to East Belfast. The other constituencies were much greater at play, and those were in consideration. North Belfast, Fermanagh, South Tyrone, Uri and Armagh, what could happen in South Belfast, what could happen in Upper Bann.
Are you very disappointed that you're not getting to defend your type of unionism against your alternatives with the CUP and the UP? Is that a disappointment?
On every election that I've stood, I've had the opportunity of putting myself against them. I think it's great that I can stand against the Conservative Party. And now I have to be reflective and say, isn't it wonderful that everyone else in East Belfast, from a unionist perspective, wants to encourage and support me?
Well, you don't know that until polling day, but you hope.
From the party's perspective, that's how it's positive. I play the cards that I'm dealt. If you believe polls and then they set them aside, some think they're the most important things, it wasn't necessary. If you look at the last 4 elections since 2010, I don't believe it was necessary. Because time and again, people in East Belfast have responded to not only our positive message, but our track record, our delivery, the relationship that we have with people in this constituency, and they've responded in huge numbers, and huge numbers over and above every other party. So, look, if something has happened, it's something outside of my control. I've heard some people attach meaning to it in a positive way, and some people attach meaning to it in a negative way. I'm quite relaxed. I'm playing the cards and I'm standing as a DUP candidate, and if people want to endorse me and support me, they'll vote on May the 7th. If they don't, they'll vote for someone else, or like Alec, spoil your vote.
Naomi, are you relaxed about the pact?
Yes, I am relaxed about the pact. To be honest, I was expecting that there would be a pact because I think the reason that East Belfast was so important is because of the person who lost it last time. I think it's as simple as that, and I think this is now about restoring people's dignity. I think if the DUP believed for a minute that they would have won the seat in a head-to-head with the Lions without the pact, they would have done that because that would have proven a point. I think the reason that we have a pact is because they were less than confident that that was going to be the case. Because whatever Gavin says about the last number of elections, what we can show is that the trajectory for Lions after 2011 was upwards, not down. We can also show that my name was not on the ballot paper in any of those elections. And I have a track record of delivery in this constituency that I think people appreciate. I also think that it is presumptuous. I think it is presumptuous to assume that anyone who supports the union will necessarily support the DUP. There are people who support the union who believe that our proposition is best represented within the union, but they want a very different kind of society in East Belfast and in Northern Ireland as a whole. And it is presumptuous to assume that those people will place the union and the security of the union in an election where it isn't at stake ahead of the kind of society they want to build. So I am quite relaxed about it because I've talked to people on the doors who feel that they've been taken for granted, not DUP voters obviously, who are happy with the situation in general, But Ulster Unionist Party voters who have said very clearly to us in the doors, they feel abandoned, they feel taken for granted, and they feel let down. And they are not voting DUP for that reason. So there will be some who do, undoubtedly there will be some who will put that as their priority, but it will not be all of them. And I'm confident enough to go to people on my record. I think if the flags debate had perhaps been more enduring in terms of its impact, there wouldn't have been impact. But I think when that started to dissipate and the anger around that started to dissipate, then we needed something else.
They're both relaxed. Alison?
Both candidates would be considered unionist, albeit conservative and moderate, but after this election, whichever one of you is elected, there is diversity in this constituency. There being the smaller nationalist community and also the ethnic community and any migrant workers. And just in the last 24 hours, we've had another attack on a Polish business owner. How do you feel that either of you would be able to represent that smaller minority, given the fact that you have considered traditional unionists?
Well, I've never stood as a unionist, let's be very clear about that. If I wanted to get into politics for a career reason, the easiest route for me would have been to join one of the two unionist parties in East Belfast. I joined politics because I wanted to stand for something different. I wanted to stand for a shared future and a united community. That's what motivated me to get involved in politics. We talked about motivation and passion earlier. That was my motivation and passion. I'm also seen in some quarters as an ardent Republican, by the way, so we get that too. I'm not so worried about how people see me. I'm worried about the values and the principles that I espouse and follow. And I believe that the best way to protect people, whether it's vulnerable people in inner East Belfast on one side of the interface or the other, is to try to build a kind of shared society where people can feel secure in their own homes, where people feel confident in their own identity. And I guess, to take it back to the leaflet, that's what bothers me most about the leaflet. It's not the leaflet, it's not about the targeting of me. But it's about the fact that it made people feel that they were in some way being diminished as people, that their identity was being taken away from them. And that kind of robbing people of their confidence makes people fearful and makes people lash out. I want to give people confidence. Nothing that happens in this election will change the position. If the union ever changes, it will be as a result of a referendum in which each one of them will have a say. Neither Gavin nor I will ever change that, all of them with our single vote, just like them. I want to give people the confidence to know that they can be who they are. But this is not just a unionist constituency. This is wider than that, and the vision for this constituency needs to be wider than that. I care as much about what happens to my constituents in the Short Strand as I do about what happens to my constituents on the Newton Arch Road. That's my duty as an elected representative, but more than that, that's my calling as a human being, because those people matter just as much, regardless of which side of the interface they live on.
Gavin, when you were Lord Mayor, you were certainly all over the city. Now that you're a councillor and not Lord Mayor, do you spend as much time in Short Strand? Do you often get to represent people who are not traditional unionists across the constituency?
I was never once in Short Strand when I was Lord Mayor.
Okay.
I was there many times before and many times since. And I've never had a difficulty when people ask me for him to stand by them and stand with them. So today in Castlereagh Street, when Asta's Neil Bar was attacked, I was with them. I was with them. And I stand with them in every individual where I get the opportunity to go and meet them. And sometimes you can't always get the details from the police. Sometimes they don't want the interference. You stand with them, but more than that, you make sure that the police, and the police actually have done more in East Belfast as a consequence of race attacks in providing personal security measures for individuals who have been targeted than anywhere else in Belfast or the city. As a local councillor, I've been delighted to be involved in what's known as the Round Tower organisation, organising conferences that are challenging people directly who may be involved in such racist and hate-filled attacks. I think that's hugely important. When I was in OFMDFM and I was working on racial equality, I was in there talking to groups, making sure they had the finance and resource to make a difference, whether it was the round table in South Belfast, whether it was the housing executive and the support that they have in taking people into an unfamiliar community, introducing them to their neighbours, making sure that they can build up the relations, because once you know somebody, once you have an appreciation for someone as an individual, you're much less likely to fear them, much less likely to attack them. I have no difficulty after this election standing up for the entire of East Belfast. I've had no difficulty standing up for the entirety of Pottinger or for Short Strand or for the Lower Newton Arch Road or right throughout East Belfast.
Okay, the pattern here is one facility East Belfast. You're going to ask about something kind of related.
Just following on from that, potentially loosely related to that, how damaging is it for East Belfast that there is this quite strong paramilitary influence in certain areas such as the Lower Newton Arch Road, such as the Woodstock Road, and how off-putting is that to business and how difficult does that make it to sell the constituency?
Well, in terms of the impact that it has on business, it undoubtedly has an impact on businesses, particularly around the Newton Arch Road and Lower Woodstock. And I've been approached by businesses who feel that they can't trade fairly and equitably because of this. The environment that is created dissuades people from stopping on their way home and doing their shopping on the road, because when people see the murals and the flags, they find it intimidating and off-putting. It creates a chill factor that stops that becoming a vibrant place where people will spend time. So it's damaging on two fronts. But more than that, there's a human cost to all of this, because the people who live cheek by jowl with paramilitarism actually are the ones who suffer the most, but they suffer in silence. They are fearful for their lives, for their homes. I have spoken with people in the constituency. They regularly come to me. They come to me because they've seen me take a stand against paramilitaries. And so they come to me and they share with me their experiences of what they have been through with this. And we need to find ways of working with the police, with the community, to tackle it. And let me be clear, lest anyone try to misrepresent my position. I'm not saying that if somebody has a paramilitary past, they can't have a future, or play a constructive role in Northern Ireland. They can, and they should. But it has to be on the same basis as every other person. It cannot be with the threat of violence, it cannot be with intimidation, it cannot be with racketeering and law breaking. It has to be on the same basis as every other single person in this society. And the kind of networks that intimidate and bully both businesses and individuals in East Belfast are utterly destructive and parasitic on those communities, and stop them being able to move forward and enjoy the kind of progress that we see in other parts of the constituency.
Gavin.
Thanks, Alan. The question's an important one, and I have to say I agree with a lot of what Naomi has said, but I want to take it one step further. She is right that in the past, she says parasitical, there are individuals who have had a tight grip around the neck of this constituency, around individuals. People remember how atrocious it was when Gemma McGrath was a young lady and was dragged from her home and shot. But that's an example in the media. There are many, many more where individuals feel pressure, where individuals are living in fear and living in fear of individuals who will make their lives a misery, a living hell. And that has an impact on community relations, that has an impact on how people go about their day-to-day business. But what do we do about it? I think that's the most important question. So I have no difficulty in condemning individuals, but when we have paramilitary murals on the wall, and they are providing a chill factor in East Belfast, and they are discouraging individuals who might otherwise feel comfortable about coming into an area, what do we do about it? You engage and you get them to do that. That's what I've been doing as a local councillor. This is something that has plagued me since 2010, having been in Belfast City Council, working on these issues, trying to get a resolution to these issues. And this is where I take an issue with Naomi, with the greatest respect. About 2 months ago, she was on the front page of the Belfast Telegraph, slating the constituency and saying that people were not coming here to invest because of the fears of paramilitarism and the racketeering. Now, what do I do about that as a local councillor? I want to find out, is that right? So I phone the PSNI, and they say, that's not an issue. You talk to businesses and say, yes, the PSNI set up a helpline for racketeering. They shut it down. And when asked at the policing board, now this issue has been raised, now we've heard some of the difficulties that a Member of Parliament has described in the Belfast Telegraph about what businesses are having and so on, please say, well, she didn't speak to us, and then they subsequently spoke with her, but they have no plans to bring a scheme like that, the racketeering hotline, back, because where it was an issue, they don't believe it to be the same issue today. I think it's very important that when we're talking about East Belfast, we don't continually focus on the negative. I think it's very important that when we're talking about East Belfast, we recognise that representatives like Alec Atwood stood up in the Assembly and said, you can't put any more investment, you can't throw any more jobs or any more money or infrastructure into East Belfast and South Belfast because they've had enough. Don't on one side say businesses are perturbed from coming here and then wonder why they don't as a consequence. We need to talk positively, and when there are issues,
Okay, I'm going to cut you off at this
and we
point.
need to deal with them.
Totally, Naomi, did you get it wrong? Are you behind the times in terms of racketeering in the East?
Well, no, I'm not, because actually if you read the Belfast Telegraph article, included in that were interviews that they did with business people who were paying to the rackets. So this wasn't something that I put out of the bag and simply made up. This was something that there was actual journalistic evidence about. And I am not, I'm afraid, like Gavin, willing to try to airbrush out the negatives in the constituency. I don't go seeking negativity. I'm actually quite an optimistic person. I believe that there is a huge amount of good that goes on in those communities. But I do believe that where we see that happening, there is absolutely no point in us trying to in any way cover it up or disguise it. It is important that people have the opportunity and the confidence, but I'll tell you something. I did work on the re-imaging of murals in East Belfast, and I launched quite a few of them at the time when those images were being redone, right across the city, but also in East Belfast. I worked with communities and we talked about the kinds of murals that they would want, and we saw those delivered. And then we saw people for party political or paramilitary political reasons go and overpaint those murals again and return them back to UVF imagery and other things. Now what we need to do is find a way of standing up and defending communities against that, because that was done on scaffolding in broad daylight with no intervention, and yet was essentially saying to the people on the Newton Arch Road who watched it happen, what would be the point of a business? What would be the point of a business saying that they are facing an extortion racket? Who will be there for them in the middle of the night when their business is attacked if no one challenges in the middle of the day when people are painting essentially adverts for the same organisations on gable walls? So we have got to challenge and press the police and the community to stand by those in the community who want to make progress and to root out those who are wedded to paramilitarism.
Question to both of that, if you don't mind. You were saying about challenging the police there. Your party leader is Justice Minister. Why is he not doing more about it? And to Gavin, you're in alliance in some cases with the PUP. You're obviously linked to the UVF. Does that not undermine some of the rhetoric that you've given to briefly?
Well, I'm happy to answer the issue about David. David actually does do a lot about this. In fact, it is through what David has done through his community safety unit, for example, that we have seen some of the interface barriers addressed. We have seen that actually be done in a progressive and constructive way. It's not David's job, I have to say, to direct the operations of the police. When we get to that point, then we are in a police state and we have bigger problems, frankly, than paramilitarism. But it is the job of the policing board, and it is the job of elected representatives, not just to hold them to account, but to support them when they take a stand. Because, for example, when the police took a stand against flags in Ballyclare, and there was a riot afterwards, the police were lambasted by unionist politicians for having stood up for the local community and for agreement that was made. So we've got to get it right. We've got to be willing to stand behind the police when they're doing the right thing and challenge them when they're not doing enough.
There's a film coming in here quite soon, so Gavin, quick
I
comment.
do want to answer that particularly. I'm not in any alliance with the PUP. I'm not sure what you're suggesting. I'll give you an invitation to come back and suggest. So the unionist forum is where people can come together and discuss ideas. Pardon?
Trudell Committee.
Trudell Committee?
Yeah. Trudell.
Have you been there?
Committee.
I've never been there.
No, I haven't been there either, but in terms of the Trudell.
But more sorry, the question was to me about alliances that I have with the PUP. I have no alliances with the PUP.
You stand for party,
And
Gavin.
I have to say,
You stand
I
for
stand for a
party.
party, and I think people can listen to the answers and they can hear quite well what I'm saying. Listen to what I say in this campaign. I think this is very important. No alliance with me and the PUP. The PUP aren't standing, and they've indicated the reasons for that. They say they haven't got the cash to fight the election. But there's a wider point here on the economy I think we need to focus on. Because you raised the question, about racketeering. When Conswater lost Tesco, what did we have? Comments to the media first about this dark cloud over the future of Conswater Shopping Centre. When I speak to them, they say they've had no contact with our Member of Parliament. When I speak to them, they show me the plans for investment and the opportunities for the future they have for East Belfast. Last night, when we were in the debate, and there was a question about an in-out referendum, what did we get from a Member of Parliament? That if you have an out-of-EU referendum...
Okay, we're taking a time off the agenda here, Gavin.
We're going to talk positively, Alan, about East Belfast.
That's okay, you're going to get 2 minutes of
We
it.
need to talk realistically about politics. We need to talk realistically about politics. There was an
That's all
issue.
scaremongering.
No, it's
All
not.
scaremongering.
It's absolutely
There's a dark
not.
cloud over Connswater. No, there's not.
No, that's not.
Party
First of all,
no, they're not.
I have met.
You're going to get your 2 minutes to sum up in a minute.
I don't want to waste it on this. I want to have a right of reply because this is important. I have met with the management and the owners of Connswater. I have discussed their future plans. But that doesn't mean that there isn't an issue for the traders who rely on Tesco and Duns for footfall. And that's a reasonable thing for me to be concerned about as the MP. It is also the case that for manufacturing, an in-out referendum for the UK would be incredibly damaging for manufacturing industry. So I am happy to be positive because I will sell the positives of investment in East Belfast. I will sell the positives of our engagement in Europe. But what I won't do is airbrush out the challenges.
Okay, I want to come. The candidates will kind of draw their breath and figure out what they're going to say for their 2 minutes and kind of sum up. We're going to get in a second. Alex, I want to ask you. You're kind of shortchanged in the middle there in terms of the question, but I want to ask you: have you been surprised by what you heard tonight? Is there anything that has been shocking to you, or has it been much of what you'd have expected?
Well, I'm glad they like each other so much. Obvious in the little exchanges. No, not really. Very briefly, can I just ask them one very quick question?
We don't really have time for questions.
Just ignoring Titanic and ignoring the Skainos Centre, and just going back to 1998, and give a 1 or 2 sentence answer. What has been? Have you noticed? Has there been any real change in East Belfast between 1998 and now? Is it a better place? Are people getting on better? Is it better community relations? Or is it just very much the same old Belfast? With the same political battles that you are facing now?
Naomi?
I think it has improved since 1998 because in 1998 we had serious issues with violence which were much more significant than what we face, though we still have a residual problem. But I have seen, for example, parts of the Newton Arch Road with creative investment actually start to regenerate. What I want to do is create the conditions where we can see that happen more.
Gavin, 30 seconds.
It's moved on leaps and bounds, whether it's new school infrastructure, new hospital infrastructure, whether it's community infrastructure that we've brought in with the network centre in Templemore Avenue. You dismiss Skainos because it's maybe out there.
It just seemed to me that you had exactly the
and
same electoral battle today that you could have had in 1998.
No, I mean,
no real change.
no, we've had issues about educational underachievement in East Belfast.
I heard that in 1998 as well.
I think we're going to have to
Yet Ashfield Boys High School is the best non-selective school in Belfast and the surrounding areas, bar none. Okay, I'm going to
the 6 candidates looking for your vote in East Belfast. Probably 4 of them are standing outside. They've had an extra hour or 2 to campaign tonight. In reverse alphabetical order, so we get them in a different order, we've got Neil Wilson from the Conservatives, there's Gavin Robinson from the DUP, Niall O'Donoghue from Sinn Féin, we've got Mary Muldoon from the SDLP, Naomi Long from Alliance, and Ross Brown from the Green Party. We're going to kind of head towards the kind of final thing of having kind of 2 minutes to go. Naomi, you went second at the beginning, so you get to go first as you close. You have 2 minutes, really 2 minutes, starting now.
Well, first of all, can I say that I have enjoyed the debate this evening. The questions have been challenging. We didn't know what they were going to be, but I would say that there were only a few surprises that we would have predicted. However, I hope that the answers have not been as predictable. I hope that people have heard something fresh and new from what we've had to say. I think one thing we have drawn out about this constituency is, first of all, that it is a fantastic place to live and to work, but also that it has some significant challenges. And not least amongst those are the fact that we need representation which is broader than simply a strong unionist voice. It needs to be a strong East Belfast voice which is returned to Parliament, one that can represent those from a diversity of backgrounds, regardless of their political opinion, regardless of their race, regardless of their sexuality, regardless of their gender, who will go to Parliament and who will represent the inclusivity and the diversity of this constituency. I want to build confidence in those areas where there is fear. I want people to believe that their identity is secure, and I want to do that by demonstrating it day in, day out. I want to deliver for the people as I did in the last Parliament, and I believe if people put their trust in me, I will not be found wanting.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Thank you very much again to all of you for participating so well in the debate, and to the questioners and the Sluggo Tool for organising. These opportunities are great because it gives you the chance to hear firsthand what it is we believe and what it is we want to do for East Belfast. And when I put myself forward for election, I said I'd be a strong voice for unionism. And I don't say that with any dismissive attitude. I don't think it's a term of abuse. It is something that I believe it brings out the best, not only in East Belfast, but in Northern Ireland as a whole. We've set out our plan. It's not just words, and I'll not just tell you a tale. We have a plan, a Northern Ireland plan, where we want to make sure Northern Ireland succeeds within the United Kingdom. Extol the benefits of unionism. Show people that in unionism there is hope and there is future, and it is progressive. And that through the political ideals that we have, the aspirations that we have for East Belfast and for Northern Ireland, everyone in Northern Ireland has the opportunity to benefit. It's there, and I suspect, not only from the engagement that I've had on the doors, but with people individually and people personally, I can see that people understand and appreciate the real potential that East Belfast has in this election. This is more about two individuals or two parties. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a huge difference. I'm a young man. I'm starting off not only my political life, but life itself. And I'm putting myself forward to say, it isn't about me or it's not about us. It's about everyone who lives in East Belfast. I'm dedicating myself to the people of East Belfast, and I hope they respond to that positively.
Thank you, Gavin. I'm going to do tonight's session online for people who couldn't make it today. Obviously, we had a limited number of tickets. So hopefully you'll be able to kind of take part in that. You can use EB Debate if you want to kind of talk about it with a hashtag online. The Strand Arts Centre would love to see you back here for a film. They might even love to see you come here to hear the Abbott Tribute Band, Bjorn Identity, who are kind of my favourites from. Normally they do the IKEA breakfast party, so it's really fun. And that's my plug for them. There's a film audience who are coming in here to see something on the big screen reasonably soon, so we do need you kind of to clear out pretty quickly, but I'm sure you'll be able to kind of congregate outside. Our thanks need to go to Chambray and to Lucid Club, who have kind of helped put on tonight. It will be much easier to put a film on in here.